Hey, friends, welcome back to the podcast. As you can tell by the title of today's podcast episode, I have a huge announcement. And I have been sitting on this announcement for a couple of months now, and I cannot wait to share with you some of the behind the scenes, what's been going on for me, what made me even decide to go for this huge dream, and how I'm preparing for it. So, if you don't know what I'm talking about or you missed the title of today's podcast episode, I landed a TEDx talk. Before we get into the entire story, I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. If you are brand new to me or this podcast, I'm so glad to welcome you. I am Dr. Priyanka Venugopal. I'm an OBGYN physician, now turned entrepreneur, and I'm on a mission to help professional women who have overachieving tendencies feel better inside out, head to toe. One of my biggest goals is to show professional women how their mindset and how they are pursuing their big dreams can have a real impact in how you are experiencing this one life you have. And if you're anything like me, you also know that when you feel better in your health and with your body, you end up showing up as the most powerful version of you. I have often talked about weight loss through that lens. My initial weight loss journey did start out with honestly just a vanity metric. My number one goal when I first started my weight loss journey was just to see that three-digit number come down. But deeper than that, I really want professional women to feel better. That's the entire point. When you really think about why we have a health goal or a weight loss goal, even, it's because we want to feel better. We want to feel better in our skin. We want to get back to the parts of us that feels like most ourselves so that we can enjoy this one life we have. My mission for all of you listening is to help you get to your health and body goals in a way that truly does feel like a lifestyle. But in my experience, to get there, you need more than just a nutrition plan or a strategy. You really have to understand the role that your stress responses are playing, your mindset is having on your ability to execute on your plan consistently. And now that we've gotten some of the introductions out of the way, I want to get into this TEDx story. I first had the idea to do a TEDx talk a few years ago. I think it was in 2021 when I heard a colleague mention that she was traveling around the world to give a TEDx talk. And I remember having this thought in my mind, which was, I didn't know that ordinary people, like ordinary in air quotes, could do a TEDx talk. Somehow I just assumed that you had to be someone of a lot of influence or maybe someone famous. I just really didn't know that quote unquote ordinary people could do TEDx talks. So that was the very first time I got this flicker of an idea that would be so freaking cool to share an idea on a TEDx stage to bring your idea to a wider audience. Now, immediately, and when I say immediate, it was pretty immediate. My immediate next thought was, no one wants to hear what you have to say. I wanted to share this in this episode because that was the very start of my TEDx journey. I got the idea that it could be so cool. And my immediate next thought was probably not for you. And it's very unlikely that you'll ever really get there. So why bother even trying? I'm calling this phase one of my TEDx story because in my experience, I think overachievers do this with any big dream or goal. Whether it's to speak on a stage or to lose the weight you want or to achieve that next big career goal or to achieve a health goal, I think a lot of times we get bit by this inspiration bug that we really have this big dream. And then if you're an overachiever that has some perfectionist thinking, or maybe you're just a very practically minded person, that's at least how I've always identified, our immediate next thought is some flavor of how we probably won't get there. And I think it's so fascinating how often smart overachievers will talk themselves out of a dream goal just because the chance of us achieving it feels so small or so slim. Over the next 4 weeks, I'm going to be sharing the different phases of me thinking about TEDx, applying for TEDx, how I handled the multiple epic rejections and failures, and the stress cycles that I had to navigate and go through to actually get to this place. And the reason that I'm doing this as a 4-part series is because my TEDx talk is happening at the end of this month. For right now, I wanted this episode 1 of this entire series, to talk about why I didn't apply for so long. Suffice it to say, when we're not aware of it, sometimes our stress archetypes are the ones that are driving our decisions. And I have found that when I allow my stress archetype to be making my decisions, usually the quality of my decisions is not as high as it could be. I think this very first episode is the perfect example. I had the idea to do a TEDx talk back in 2021. That's years ago. But the stress archetype that squashed my idea immediately was my fear of failing. I was so worried about failing, and the chances of failing felt so huge that my brain created a lot of 3C stories. A 3C story is convincing, convenient and very compelling for the overachiever to keep their status quo. It's much easier to keep your status quo because it doesn't require you to expend much effort. It's a lot more familiar. You already know how to do what you're already doing. You're already an expert at it because you're already doing it. And so you never have to try to make the big leaps, and therefore you never have to fail. I wanted this to be episode 1 of this series because the fear of failing has actually dictated a lot of decisions I've made over the last multiple decades. I can think back on so many examples from just even my earliest years in childhood, like going up to someone and saying hello to them or trying to make a new friend. I was so afraid of rejection or so afraid that someone might have a negative thought about me that I wouldn't even go up to them. I kept my world so small because I was afraid that I might get turned away. And then, of course, growing up in school, applying for college and then eventually medical school, the fear of failing kept my goals and dreams what I would call practical. If it seemed impractical, I didn't bother trying because my chances of failure were so high. I really think a lot about how overachievers have been mentally trained and effectively brainwashed to stop dreaming big because we think we don't want to fail. We have this idea that if we can control our failures in advance, that somehow that's better than the unexpected, out of control failure. Here's what I realized as over the past few years, I kept getting that sparkle of an idea to apply for a TEDx talk and then squashing it down. It was just like the cycle. I would get the idea and then I would immediately squash it down, get the idea and then immediately squash it down. And I think what I had to finally get to was realizing that the idea that I had felt important enough and the idea that I had felt big enough that I was willing to feel the possibility of failure and I was willing to feel the sting of rejection simply to get the idea out there. And I don't know that I would have been fully ready for that had I not gone on my health and weight loss journey. I'm saying this because I have been sharing a lot with my clients, my peers, some of my friends, how my health and weight loss journey actually gave me the $1 million skills and the tools that I got to use and apply towards my TEDx journey, which feels kind of wild. Like, what does me losing weight and achieving a health goal have anything to do with TEDx? But this is the exact correlation. For me to lose a little over 60 pounds as a busy woman doctor with an unpredictable schedule and young kids and moving parts, and to learn how to be consistent despite having a very big and unpredictable life, required me to overcome obstacles, challenges, and build skills. I had to learn how to prioritize myself, to delegate things, to challenge myself in a way that I hadn't yet. And so in my journey of losing a little over 60 pounds and then maintaining it through many messy, sticky seasons, I built a toolbox of skill sets. I call these $1 million skills because $1 million skills transcends any one goal. And as I embarked on my life as an entrepreneur and now as a coach, especially towards this TEDx journey, I was able to pick up that toolbox that was now full of lots of $1 million skills and apply it towards this journey. And so this is what happened for me last year. The idea came up yet again that applying for this TEDx talk with this one idea I have felt really important. And I noticed myself start to squash it down again, but I paused. And I asked myself one question. Why do I keep squashing this idea down? If you did get to present your idea on a TEDx stage, is that win worth the possibility of failing? Here's another way of asking this question. If you have a health or weight loss goal, I want you to imagine actually achieving the goal, being down the 10 pounds, the 50 pounds, achieving the health goal that you have been dreaming of. Is achieving that goal worth the possibility that you might fail? And I got to a place last year when it came to this TEDx talk that my answer started to be yes. The idea of achieving this milestone and getting to present this idea on a TEDx stage felt worth it for me to face the possibility of rejection and failure. I realized that one of the biggest reasons that I kept squashing down the idea is because I was confusing familiarity with safety. Having a goal requires you to disrupt your status quo. That is the definition of having a goal. You want to be somewhere beyond where you are right now. And that means we're choosing something unfamiliar, right? When we're going for a goal and we're trying to achieve some big thing, it means we're reaching for something unfamiliar. But I think overachievers and humans across the board, but I think that overachievers can sometimes confuse a feeling of familiarity with safety. We will keep results that feel terrible simply because it's familiar, rather than pursuing an unfamiliar goal just because it feels unknown. That flutter that we all experience when we're reaching for something big or new, I confused that feeling with a stop sign. I thought that feeling of fear or nerves meant that this was dangerous. And I think that that is the part I wanted to highlight in this very first episode. It's really normal to experience a flicker of nerves or fear or something bigger, even. You might even have some anxiety around pursuing a bigger dream. But I think it's so important that we start asking ourselves, is this something that's truly dangerous? Or is this simply something that's unfamiliar? Deciding to hold back on a dream for yourself simply because you're afraid of failing or because it feels unfamiliar is simply driven by a stress archetype. And I think what we're here for and why you're listening to this episode is maybe we don't want to be making our best, highest quality decisions from a place of stress anymore. So, my invitation with just this very first episode is when you get bit by the inspiration bug, give the idea a chance. We're so fast, especially as overachievers, to shut ourselves down and to come up with all the reasons that it probably won't work. But imagine what happens if you gave equal airtime to answering, what if it does? What if you watered that idea, gave it a little bit of sunshine, gave it some air and some space to breathe? What might come out of that? And what might the impact be on your entire life if the idea becomes your reality? I'm so glad that I get to share my TEDx story and journey with you. I hope that you're finding it helpful and valuable in some way. And really, my intention with this series is to inspire even one person to take the leap, give yourself permission to pursue something that you've been holding back on, because we have just this one life, one body, one self to take care of, and just one life experience that we get to have. I think we can spend a very, very long amount of time, days, months, and years can pass us by as we're waiting for some perfect time to create these dreams. But my goal is that we start creating them right now. I do want to leave you with a resource that might be helpful for you to uncover what your stress archetype is. I created a stress archetypes quiz. It takes just a few minutes where you can answer a few questions and it will give you a quiz result. We all have a primary stress archetype that is driving a lot of our decisions, both in the workplace and at home. And just identifying and getting to know what your stress archetype is can give you power back. I might not be able to do away with some of my stresses, and I might not be able to do away with my very automatic responses, but what I can do is become really good at catching myself in the moment. I highly recommend you go and take this quiz. You can go and get it over at burnstressloseweight.com/stress. It takes just a few minutes and you will be emailed with your results. Plus, you'll be taken to a results page with some resources and specific podcast episodes that can help you navigate how to walk through having that stress archetype. I hope you'll have an amazing day, an amazing week, and I can't wait to come back with more of the story.